one of the things that I think is a bit of a hallmark of healthy relationships is the story that you develop as a couple. We say to ourselves, doesn't matter what happens, it doesn't matter if we are going through rough times, we are the kind of people that get through that. We not only get through it, but we come out better on the other end.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nusky. It's wonderful to have you with us on the show today because it's all about you. It's all about the audience that join us on the show, and your wonderful warm feedback is making all the difference. Now, on today's show, I have somebody very special who's going to be talking about marriages and how to not only maintain them, but recover some of them from points at which you don't think they could necessarily be recovered. And with that, I'm on the line with Mark Johnson. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. Now, Mark and I were just talking about High Thrive Coaching and his wonderful business partner, Heather. And we're going to be talking a lot about not only the steps to building a great relationship, a great foundation, but also what to do when things are not going so well. Now, before I do that, Mark, I always love to give my guests the opportunity, I guess, to share a little bit about themselves and the journey that they've taken in their lives to get to where they are today.
If you'd asked me, say, 10 years ago, if I would have envisioned myself owning a business, I would have kind of laughed. I would not have envisioned myself being here at all. It wasn't part of my plan. I was going to school for psychology, and I thought, okay, I have a career out in front of me. I'm, even beyond that, like as a kid, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, okay, I'm not that organized. I'm not that, driven in typical circumstances. So probably not going to own a business. But what ended up happening is, so I had everything set up. I was finishing up grad school. This was 5-6 years ago. I was just a few weeks from graduation. I had my job lined up, and I was looking forward to everything being so much easier because at the time I was going to school full time. I had a full-time job. I had a part-time job on top of that, and we had at that time 4 kids. We have 5 now.
Yeah.
So it was really busy. And I had let the stress get to me, and essentially I made some mistakes that my program director thought was sufficient enough to say, I'm not going to let you graduate, or I'm going to dismiss you from the program.
Wow.
I found myself in a situation where I had everything planned out. I had a future ahead of me, and then I was stuck then with no plans and about $90,000 in student loan debt. So I was
Fairly reasonable
not.
stack, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I don't know if you know, but working in mental health is just not very profitable. So even though I was working my butt off, I wasn't making much more, even with an undergraduate degree. I wasn't making much more than minimum wage. Yeah. So here I was working a warehouse job when I was expecting to have like a really fulfilling career in order to make ends meet. And my wife saw how this was affecting me. She, bless her, I wouldn't be here where I am today without her support. And so she started really diving into personal development, and reluctantly, I followed her. I was not into it at first. And eventually, I got out of this depressive funk and said, okay, well, I have this education. I might not have the piece of paper. What can I do with this? And we set about making contacts and connections. I got a hold of an old friend from when we were going to school, which is my current business partner, Heather Choate. And, with her being that driven one and organized one, and me having a lot of the ability to really put things together and having the skill to actually help people, we were able to create something really good. And we've been building that for like the last, I'm trying to remember, 3-4 years now. And it's just really boomed.
I've looked
So
at the bio, and there's more than 12,000 marriages saved. You've got, almost 500,000 subscribers, and just as many on Facebook following your work now. You
yeah,
mentioned before about your wife, essentially partnering up with you in life to, look at personal development, get you through those tough times. I wonder, are there common threads through every relationship, and what would they be?
I certainly think that there are common threads with relationships that fail. I also think
Hmm.
that there are common threads with relationships that really do well and are healthy. I know one of the big things for my wife and I'll say we are very extremely happy together.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that I think is a bit of a hallmark of healthy relationships is the story that you develop as a couple. My wife and I continually support a specific narrative that we've chosen. We choose it on purpose. We say we are. We say to ourselves, doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if we are going through rough times. We are the kind of people that get through that, and we not only get through it, but we come out better on the other end. We are the kind of people that, and we have a bunch of these sort of statements.
Hmm.
We're the kind of couple that um, really enjoys each other's company. We're the kind of couple that longs to be with each other. And we consciously try to reinforce this message with different actions, and we actually explicitly say it to each other.
These are like values, aren't they?
Yeah, it's not just having values, but it is trying to actively support those values, to talk about those values, to have those values be present.
Hmm.
Uh, the big thing that took us from that really a hard place is, a lot of stuff that we studied is a lot of those law of attraction type principles that were popularized by people like Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey, or the book The Secret. And it has a lot to do with, really consciously choosing the direction you're going in, focusing in on those things that you want, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Now, I've been reading through the bio, and I can see that you've been featured on Fox, Yahoo, CBS, and many other major outlets, and you've helped thousands of couples. And it goes on to say here that you're considered the ICU for marriages. Can we talk a little bit about why that is?
Sure. I would say that in a lot of cases, um, if a relationship gets to a certain point, I would say there's many experts who would approach these sort of situations and say that there's nothing that can be done. If they say, okay, my husband or wife, if a client of ours approached maybe another therapist or counselor, they said, okay, my husband or wife doesn't really want to be married anymore. What do I do? And they'd say, okay, well, it's time to grieve, and it's time to give up. And
Draw up the
uh,
papers and walk away.
exactly. And we've created a business around helping these dire situations
Mm.
where we say, okay, one person in the marriage can make some big changes and have a reasonable ability to turn things around. That's what we're talking about when we're saying we're the ICU.
There seems to be a way back from the brink of disaster, as it were. Is this about communication? Is this about love language? What is this based
Oh,
around?
there's so many so many moving pieces. I feel like I look at relationships a bit differently, oddly, almost like it's in this mechanical thing with like lots of different moving pieces that affect other things. But we try to hit a few big points here. I do think that in many cases there's this lack of understanding and perspective.
Hmm.
So we really try to help our clients with that. Oftentimes, as a spouse is pulling away, the other one that's really wanting the marriage still panics and starts even sometimes pushing their partner away, saying, oh, well, how could you leave me? How could you do this to me? And we really need to help our clients calm down and actually understand that there's probably some legitimate reasons here, something that's very relatable and understandable. We also then make sure, we don't just say, okay, it's communication. There's quite often very real problems that need to be adjusted. And we help our clients take a look at themselves and say, okay, where can I make some adjustments? We focus in on that narrative piece that I was talking about. Just like in healthy relationships, there's this healthy story that supports the marriage. Quite often over years before something like a divorce comes up, there are red flags. There's things that start to snowball and develop a negative story about what's going on. And we help our clients. We can't force their partners to think differently, but we can help our clients to know how to nudge the story in better directions. And then certainly we do a lot of work with our clients on personal growth and development, helping them to be in a healthy place. And if we hit all these different points, this is kind of a very general, broad description of what we do, but we try to hit those different points, and quite often there can be some big shifts, some big changes.
Yeah, thank you so very much. And being in a relationship myself, I know that every day is different, and you need to work at a relationship. You can't just hope that it goes well. Are you finding that would be true?
I will say I enjoy working on my marriage. I certainly do need to work on it. There are times I notice that there are times at the end of the day, I've had a long day, I'm feeling a bit stressed, and I say, I need some time to relax. But then I can see my wife, who's also had a long day, and I recognize, okay, I need to put aside my own feelings for a moment, and I need to make sure that I'm there for her. And exactly like you said, there is this kind of idea. If you want your relationship to be happy, there has to be some effort put into it. Now, it's easy to have that right at the beginning. The relationship is exciting, it's new, it's fresh, it doesn't feel like work then. But we don't make a mistake about it. It still is work. We just don't recognize it as work, usually at those beginning stages.
Yes, because the gloss seems to wear off after a while, and then life settles down. You settle into a comfortable zone with each other, don't you? And I keep thinking to myself, there are so many possible reasons for a relationship going a little bit sour, if you like. It could be family influences, it could be work, it could be children. What are the first signs that a couple should be aware of, or an individual should be aware of, that, hey, look, things are not going so right here? Is it the argumentative stage, or can we get onto this a little prior to that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a very common couple threads that I think eventually will lead to a crisis of some sort within the marriage, if not sooner than later. Now, I don't think that ideally a relationship should be this contractual thing where you need to see what you're getting and what you're giving. I do think that if a relationship starts failing, it does get to that. And if you don't have, say, an avenue, there's two different avenues that we need to have a way forward in. And if there's not an avenue for expressing concerns or problems and having them addressed, or not having an avenue to express needs or wants and have those addressed and met, then those are certainly huge red flags in my mind. And so, your audience here, you all can ask yourself, okay, within my relationships, can I actually bring up concerns? Do I feel heard when I talk about this? Can I bring up things that I would like to do in terms of moving forward and have a discussion about this and have some support there? And if you don't have either of those avenues, I will tell you, eventually it's going to come crashing down. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there's value in having alone time, like literally separated from each other, not from a permanent perspective, just now and then?
Oh, you mean like day to day here and there?
Yeah, like having your own space away from each other, where you're literally apart from each other, just to have your own me time.
Well, I think that's all dependent on the individuals. Myself, I certainly need that.
Hmm.
I'm mostly an introverted type person. I've learned to be much more outspoken and whatnot over the years, but my comfort zone is to have some quiet, have some calm, have some moments to myself. Now, the ideal here, I would think, is to make, once again, it's those avenues. Do you have an avenue to discuss your needs? And if your need is to have some alone time, can that need be met? And if your spouse's need is to really have some connection, is there an avenue for them to get that connection on a regular basis, that as much as needed? Yeah.
Do you see that an individual's daily routine can be done together, and is there value in morning walks and exercising together? And again, it seems to me that most of this work is very situational.
Oh yeah. It's everyone's relationship, everyone's needs are a little bit different. I personally like to evaluate these sort of needs and whatnot based off of there's a woman, her name is Chloe Madonnas. I think she actually works with Tony Robbins and may provide some of his materials, but she talks about 6 basic emotional needs that need to be met. Yeah, but like if we're talking about individualized circumstances, and certainly everyone's going to have slightly bigger priorities in some needs rather than others.
Hmm.
Uh, and I honestly think that going about your daily routine, if that's what if you need that connection with your partner, then certainly there should be an avenue for that. Me personally, my wife and I have come into a bit of a rhythm. Even though I need my own personal time, she needs her own personal time. Typically during the day, um, when we're going about our business, if we can do our business together, we seek to do that together. And then in the evening, we have young kids.
Yeah.
When all the kids have gone to bed, that's kind of our time to be quieter. And sometimes we'll spend that quiet time together, and other times I'm able to say, hey, I need some time just to myself, or she might be able to express the same, and that's fine.
It's one of those blissful moments of an evening, isn't it? When the children are finally asleep.
Oh, I tell you that my wife Jennifer, we say, okay, 8 o'clock is bedtime, especially for the little kids. After that, we are no longer parents, and unless someone's missing an arm, the house is on fire, something like that. But we really, I think that's important actually, though, to have that divide, um, and a release from some of those, constant demands
Now
for
let's
family
talk.
life.
Let's talk about arguments, because we all know that we have them, and they
Mhm.
feel so unnatural, so almost relationship ending. They seem so sharp at times. Are these a normal thing that we should be embracing rather than pushing away?
Yes. Yes. I think actually that if you as a couple are not having some arguments, some fights here and there, that to me would be a sign that something is missing.
Hmm.
I would suspect that someone is not able to have a voice in those circumstances, because it doesn't matter what kind of similar backgrounds you have, you you're different people. Now, I like what John Gottman has to say about this. John Gottman being a very famous researcher in terms of marriages and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about one of the most important skills to have in a long-lasting relationship like a marriage is the ability to repair after fights and arguments. And I couldn't agree more, because even though I talk about relationship skills every single day, day in and day out, I still have arguments. I still have weak moments where my temper rises. There's lots of different moments where we're not at our best, and that's okay. And one of the big things that my wife and I have really tried to hone is that ability to come back after we've cooled off and make sure that everything is all right and that everyone feels heard.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep thinking about here is that over the years I've met different people, and I think to myself, there are so many different personality profiles. Is there a way for people to be able to understand each other when they get into a relationship early on in the piece in terms of their personality profile? Or is that something that
Oh,
just evolves over time?
I really like different models in terms of personalities. Now, historically, I had not really liked a lot of personality tests or personality theories.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, I have come to appreciate some of them. Of particular interest of mine, I really like the Enneagram personality tests. It
Yep, yep.
has a number of different ones. I feel like that one's a bit more complete in that it talks about how the different personality types have different ways of expressing themselves when an individual is in a stronger place or a weaker place. And I think it really accurately describes what's needed at those different stages, whether you're in a healthier place or not. I mentioned earlier the 6 basic emotional needs. I think that's a really good place to evaluate these sort of things in terms of personality and what needs are your priority. But I think you even mentioned things like love languages,
Mm.
which I think is a really good model for really figuring out how each of us like to give or receive love, or to feed that need, that emotional need for connection.
Yeah, well, that was
Uh,
something that my wife brought to me, in fact, because there were times that we were having arguments, and this is real life. This is not a dress rehearsal, and
mhm.
she came to me with this particular tool, and you know what? It helped to understand the differences because we are innately different, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My wife and I were very different as well. And I'm going to say my wife is usually the one that's a few steps ahead of me on this. She did the same thing. We had a discussion at one point when we were really busy and we were not connecting. We were snapping at each other, and we were like, we came to realize that we were both trying to contribute into the marriage, but not recognizing the efforts because we were speaking those different love languages. And we've learned to adapt a little bit more since those conversations.
This is a wonderful call. There's so much great real life comments here, some content that you can take away for the audience who are with us today. Now,
Mhm.
I'd like to ask how much impact and how aware should a couple be in terms of the media nowadays?
My personal opinion, I like to at least keep some tabs on media and whatnot, just to stay informed. But I think a lot of what's out there is so very much focused on what's going wrong, and does have an impact on someone who's constantly, uh, you know, being fed this kind of like there's a crisis out there. People,
Mm-hmm.
there's arguments, there's things going wrong, and it does kind of translate a little bit over into personal relationships a bit, especially like social media arenas where there is a tendency, I think, with a lot of people to compare what they have to other people, or at least what people are showing as their front on social media. Um, my if I could step away from a lot of these social media platforms, I would. Unfortunately, we
You
do a lot
exist
of our
there.
business over
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
and our advertising and whatnot. Um, but I think as my personal philosophy is, I think that social media can be a really good tool for connection and whatnot, as long as you are translating it into more personal arenas. You're using it as a way to connect personally with someone else. Because what will happen is on a lot of these arenas, we comment on others' lives, but we don't really engage. We aren't able to share of ourselves and have that be recognized, or to give that recognition to other people quite so well.
And to reinforce that, I noticed that there are a lot more men's and women's groups specifically to talk about just day to day issues in life. Do you see that there's value in those?
Actually, something more like that, I would find more value in something like that, because these sort of platforms can be used, if they're used to be able to share of yourself and have that sharing be recognized, and to have that, and to give that recognition to other people as they're sharing, it can be a hugely beneficial, connecting medium here. But I just think that the general aimlessness that many people use social media for, works against that. So as long as it's, I say, purposeful and it's conscious use of especially social media, then sure, that can be a great thing to use it for.
That correct intent, going in there with a proper alignment with what the issues are, rather than, just squandering time away where you could be physically talking to your partner. In terms of talking with your partner, I know that technology has a lot to answer for here, that wonderful little thing called the smartphone. What's your take on smartphones? You hear these stories about couples who wake up and the first thing they do without looking at each other is turn to their mobile phone. Do you think people should go on a digital diet occasionally?
Exactly what you described right there. When someone gets up first thing in the morning and goes to the smartphone, they're using that technology to not really connect with someone. They're getting almost like an imitation connection where people can comment but not really have a lot of engagement, a direct focus on one person. If you think about it, like, you might make a comment and then you leave and you go somewhere else, and you don't even, you might not come back to that conversation for some time.
Not even remember it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not really real engagement. No one really, there's kind of the sense that, oh, someone's commenting on me. They're paying attention, but I feel like it feels hollow. But even what you're describing there, like perhaps being physically present with someone, but engaging more with the smartphone, I think can be really damaging. We have this discussion frequently. We might be sitting there on the couch, and it might be that those evening hours where we're shutting down, and one of us might pick up the phone, and either my wife or I feel like we have the ability to say, hey, I want you to be present with me. And we were able to make that request. I mean, so even us, we're not immune to it. It's just that it does give the sense that, the other person isn't present. They don't find the connection right there meaningful. They're looking elsewhere for some sort of connection. And I can think it can be very damaging if that is a consistent message. So I do think that, especially in connecting moments, as you put it, there should be, the smartphones, those devices should be put away. And,
Given that you've worked with literally tens of thousands of couples, I'd love to talk about some of the experiences, those, obviously without naming names. Could you share us some of the success stories with us?
Yeah, it really warmed my heart. This was maybe about 6 months ago. I had a client who I hadn't seen in some time, but I was looking at my calendar for the day, and I saw a familiar name right there, and so I was really surprised. I followed through with that appointment. When he came on, this was one of my favorite stories. Is that he just said that how happy he was with his marriage. Now, when I had last left him, he and his wife had the date set. He was telling me all we had to do was go into the courtroom. We had that, it was, days away until they were supposed to meet there and just sign the papers, and it would be done. And his wife called him up, a few days ahead of time. She said, I can't do it. And so I was really curious. I was like, why? What made the difference there? What of all the things that we tried, what made the difference? And he was telling me how his wife had really appreciated the consistency. Now, to explain that, they had made several attempts at other points in their lives to fix their marriage, and his wife had become a bit disillusioned that any of the changes were real. A lot of the things that I helped him with was to really look at himself, to make sure that the changes were genuine. It wasn't just to get her back.
Wasn't superficial.
Yeah, it wasn't superficial, exactly. And then even beyond that, I helped him to really be able to communicate those changes in a healthy manner. Not like, see, look at me, see all the things that I've done, but like really identify those intentions. Why was he making these changes? And you know, help his, communicate to his wife when those intentions are at play, like when he's really trying to support her.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was when I had last left him, like I said, his wife was still pretty dead set on divorce. She's saying, you're just going to go back to the way things were. And in the end, as he was helping her with the divorce process, essentially saying, you know what, just really want you to be happy. This hurts me a whole lot. And I'm going to keep supporting you until you won't let me, essentially. And that really shifted things a lot for her. So, I mean, I have dozens of stories like that. And it's really rewarding to see these kind of experiences where they come right to the edge of everything falling apart. And, we have,
They recover.
they're able to recover. And the unfortunate thing for me is I don't always get to see that recovery. Oftentimes I will leave them off, and they're still engaging in repair and whatnot, and they don't always call me back. Will often see evidence, as we're maybe connected on social media and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
because of the business. But that was one that really stood out because he took the time.
He made the effort.
Yeah, he took the time to reach out and contact. It was, I don't know. This is why I'm in the business, because I really like that part of being able to know that I'm affecting people's lives.
And thank you so much
like
for
this.
sharing. I really do appreciate it. Now, I also get this impression that both Heather and yourself would have some really close relationships that form from this process. And on that, what is the process when somebody approaches High Thrive Coaching? They're in that spot and they want to find that help. What are the steps that you take them through, and where are they going to find you?
So we do offer things that are a little bit different from, say, a typical therapy experience.
Mm-hmm.
When people really start to seek some help out, we want to make sure that they're making the right decisions. So
Yeah.
I have a team of people that will do some complimentary consultation calls, and I've given them some instructions, basically saying, hey, if this is really too far gone, we don't want to be that kind of company that's going to take their money anyway and whatnot. So we screen them. But when they do get involved, there's a lot of support that's needed. So I've developed a series of, skill training type videos, things to help, help our clients build up that empathy, build up communication skills and whatnot, that I like my clients to go through, just so I don't have to repeat the same sort of lessons over and over again, and people can go at their own pace on that. Beyond that, I know that things can turn on moment's notice. So me and my team, we have group calls. People can submit questions and get help from myself or one of my team members. We run those every day of the week, at least during the business week, and sometimes multiple times in a day. So our clients can always get help there. And then beyond that, we then of course have the more traditional therapy type sessions, where like an hour long online. If people are
Fantastic.
really, yeah. So there's a lot of different arenas where they can get support, because this is not a problem that you want to take lightly. And, I think a lot of people in this sort of position, if they're in that sort of crisis, need a bit more of that guiding hand.
Thank you so very much. This is just wonderful commentary. This shows that both you and Heather have been making some impact, I guess you'd say, on relationships now. Ultimately, for those who are on the call with us today, If you're in that situation, you're now looking for somebody to help you with your relationship, either mend it or improve it from where it is, reach out to both Mark and Heather at highthrivecoaching.com. And on that note, Mark, I just have to say thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Yeah, it was my pleasure here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.